It Takes You Away was the most promising episode of Series 11 in my opinion. I mean, I haven't seen all of it yet at time of writing, but given whose name's on the last two and precedent, I feel comfortable in calling it. I do admire the ambition of It Takes You Away. Aside from Demons and Rosa, pretty much every other episode this series has felt like it was only there to assemble the familiar elements, provide Doctor Who's function of regularly scheduled pulp sci-fi, and piss off home till next week. It Takes You Away was a very different and much more exciting experience because I couldn't really predict what it was going to do next at any point in the runtime, and that was really quite refreshing. We start out with the episode looking like a traditional horror story, transition into a slightly cheesier haunted house looking section, before coming out the other end of the mirror into a tragic fairy tale-ish Black Mirror type setup where people's loved ones seemingly come back from the dead, and no one can figure out how or why or even if it's really them. Each idea seemed to just sort of spring naturally off the last one, and they mesh really well. While it wasn't perfect, it felt like a product of inspiration rather than formulas, and I liked that a lot. It's got this real dreamlike feel to it, where nothing makes much sense anyway, so who gives a shit? That and it set me in mind of Warrior's Gate, one of the trippier classic Doctor Who serials, and one of my all-time favourites, which is always a good thing. A couple more drafts and maybe I would have loved this episode. I kind of think that if it had been a two-parter and had a Doctor-like first episode centering on Eric and Han, that would have been really interesting. It would have helped ramp up the emotional side of things if we actually see the first time that Eric finds his dead wife on the other side of the mirror. I mean, I know they didn't start out with showing us how Eric finds the other world, so that would be the mystery for the Doctor and co to unravel, and the unpredictable nature of It Takes You Away was part of what made it what it was, and a proper mystery was desperately needed to jog me out of the waking coma that most of this series has felt like, and you can't have it both ways, and this way's fine enough, I guess. I also like the idea of Grace showing up again in this world and seeming so much like her. It's almost like Graham's got her back again. And okay, so the Doctor's saying it's not really her, but Graham can pretend, can't he? She really seems like Grace. There's just some wonderful, sparkling, tragic moments between Graham and Grace in It Takes You Away, but there is one key thing that's missing. Any kind of groundwork for a story like this in the preceding episodes. You'll remember I said back in my Woman Who Fell to Earth review that Grace's death felt a bit blunt, conciliatory, and like it was just done as a gimmick to prove the point that people can die now. Well, the rest of the series has proven me 100% correct, because aside from a few nice evocative scenes of Graham coming home in arachnids, the only impact that Grace's death has really had on the rest of the series is to generate a couple of conversations between Graham and Ryan that just go, "I miss my nan. Yeah, I do too." And that's not enough to make this feel like the big deal it's supposed to be. Aside from those few scenes in arachnids, we've totally skipped over Graham's grief. And hell, the moments after he loses fake Grace in It Takes You Away aren't nearly as heavy and brutal as they should be. I think the key issue here and why this isn't working is that they just killed Grace off way too early. She was just sort of here and then she wasn't. You can't really do much depth when you've decided to do that. Maybe we should have had Graham and Grace as side characters for the whole series. They show up in occasional episodes when Yaz and Ryan get brought home to do the domestic-y bits for 9 episodes. Then Grace dies in the finale after we've actually got the chance to know her and Graham. And then Graham joins the TARDIS crew in series 12. And we have a series arc in which he grieves over Grace, which ends with It Takes You Away, where he finds Grace in this other world. And it's so hard, but he has to find the strength to reject fake Grace and accept that she's dead, and that's him pushing through the grief. If the Chris Chibnall era had done that, I would be applauding it. I mean, yes, in Series 1, Rose's dad's dead before we hit the word go, but the loss and growing up without him was actually emphasised quite a lot, and we also had a whole episode dealing with his death where he takes centre stage. We actually spend some time with him so he feels like a real person. And when she actually finds her dad again in an alternate universe in Series 2, guess what they did? A two-parter. Rise of the Cybermen and Age of Steel weren't great, but this angle of the story hit hard because the groundwork was there in the first series and the idea had room to breathe. I didn't think that Rose arc was particularly great, but when comparing the two, this is a Cliff Notes version of that. The drama in It Takes You Away is fine for what it is, but without laying the groundwork for an episode like this, it's about a 20th of the story that it could have been. But that's more a general Series 11 complaint. It's not this episode's fault that it doesn't hit nearly as hard as it should do, because, as said, what's here is fine enough, and I suppose it's all it ever really could have been considering how the characters were handled in the preceding episodes. If you try and imagine an alternate reality where the groundwork had been there, It Takes You Away is a really decent episode. In its current state, it's just sort of alright, I guess. The idea of a universe of resurrected dead loved ones is wonderful. The Doctor's technobabble explaining that this is a conscious universe is a bit overdone, but it kinda makes sense, and I was enjoying this very grandiose concept. Oh, and of course I loved the scene where the conscious universe turns into a talking frog. That's possibly the most Douglas Adams image presented in on-screen Doctor Who. That wasn't actually written by Douglas Adams, of course. Another problem is that It Takes You Away is yet again another product of too many ideas and not enough time to execute them inefficiently again. You got the setup, the mysteries unravelling, finding the other world, emotional hook, techno-babble. A story like this was never going to fit comfortably in 50 minutes without feeling rushed and nowhere near as heavy and impactful as it should be. I don't know, maybe It Takes You Away is just a little bit too ambitious and beyond the capabilities of the show in its current state, especially considering how not very well the characters have been done this season. I also didn't feel a whole lot of emotional weight when Han's mother hugs her and she can tell immediately that it's not her. That's a moment that should have really been emphasised, and yet I barely even noticed it. The ideas that are here are very big and interesting, but the drama's so underplayed because of the limitations of the format that they're playing out in. In the end, It Takes You Away was such a shame. It had a lot of potential, but...
Stop, Stuart.
Wait, who said that?
Me. I said that.
Oh my god, a talking snail!
Yes, Stuart. I am the physical embodiment of the universe.
Oh yeah, heard that one before. Yeah, I know where this is going.
No, I am. I am the universe. You must not hate on Doctor Who anymore, Stuart.
Wait, if you're a living embodiment of the universe, does that mean if I step on you, that I'll destroy the universe?
Well, I suppose, but if you...
Cool! I've always wanted to know what it'd feel like to destroy a universe.
No, Stuart, you destroy the universe! No!